Hi, my name is Dr. Mitchell Greene. I'm a clinical and sports psychologist and author of Managing the Mind Chatter: How Athletes Can Build Confidence, Reduce Doubts, and Win the Mental Game. What's mind chatter? Mind chatter is that conversation that we have with ourselves that's full of doubt, second guessing, and negativity. We all have mind chatter. But if athletes aren't taught how to manage it and don't learn the skills to keep it from sabotaging all of their hard work, they will be perpetually frustrated. The best trained athletes, from the juniors to the Olympians and the pros, need to know how to respond when the mind chatter shows up. And guess what? The mind chatter is always going to show up in competitive situations for everyone, for some more than others. For the athletes who are reading this book, they will find that the chatter is something that can be managed, even though they might feel like it's been managing them. One of the areas where you start to learn how to manage it is you understand better from reading this book about why it shows up and when it will show up. Here's a hint. Mind chatter always shows up under two conditions: when there's a lot of uncertainty and when there's a lot at stake. You might be thinking that's not just in sports, and you're right. We have uncertainty and can feel like there's a lot at stake in other situations. Other people might benefit from reading this book too. Coaches might appreciate this more about how to help their athletes. Sports parents might be able to better appreciate how to help their kids. But even salesmen and executives, we've found, benefit from the tips about learning how to manage the mind chatter, and first off, understanding that it is going to show up when those two conditions, uncertainty and a lot at stake, are at play. What's unique about my approach and what makes this book different than a lot of the books out there is I'm not promoting a positive thinking approach. It turns out that positive thinking isn't as helpful to deal with mind chatter as people might think. In fact, if you have a lot of doubts and you're trying to fake positivity, you might actually feel worse. You're not a wimp. You're not a coward for having mind chatter. Everyone has it at some level. What you're going to learn in this book is how to make room for it and not fight with it, because what you resist persists, and what you will let be will let you be. We're going to learn how to let it be. So you'll learn in this book why confidence is overrated. An athlete will learn how to channel more courage than confidence when the mind chatter is really distracting them from performing at their best. Why courage over confidence, which is a chapter unto itself in this book? Well, as we've discussed, sometimes it's really hard to be confident. If you lose to the best player or you're about to face another great player, it's hard to be confident in those situations. But courage is something you do have some control over. And by the way, you cannot be courageous except in the presence of fear. In other words, by definition, fear always precedes courageous action. So athletes, we're going to look at the doubts and the mind chatter as sending out an opportunity for us to be courageous. This is one of the powerful lessons you'll read about in this book, turning mind chatter and doubts on their head. Instead of looking at it as an obstacle, we're actually going to look at it as an opportunity to get better, and an opportunity to show all the hard work we've been putting in. Courage over confidence. Well, how do you manage chatter? I boil it down to the 3 R's. The first is recognizing it. That might sound simple, but it's not always as simple to know what voice in your head is the chatter versus what's you. We come up with some real strict ideas about how you can get better at recognizing chatter and realizing it's not you that's pumping out those messages of doubt and insecurity. It's your chatter. The second is respond, making sure you know how to respond to the chatter. The mistake athletes often make is when they have doubts and negativity is to respond with positivity and positive thoughts. That does seem plainly obvious, but it turns out it doesn't work. Because if you're trying to convince yourself of feeling some way that you really don't feel, sometimes it could actually make you feel worse. The approach you're going to read about in my book is more of an acceptance-based approach, being able to first recognize the chatter and responding by actually not trying to be any more positive than you already might be. We certainly don't want you any more negative, but we're going to learn how to make room for chatter by changing your relationship to it. The third is refocusing. Once you get terrific at managing the chatter and first being able to recognize it and learning how to respond to it, then you're going to be in a great position to refocus. And you know where we'll refocus? We'll refocus on some things that are controllable in the game in front of you, and you'll also refocus in a way that keeps you focused on the game itself. When chatter is at its worst, it doesn't have you thinking about the game. It has you thinking about who you're going to disappoint, what expectations you're not going to meet, and how embarrassed you might feel. Those don't have to do with the game itself. It has to do with our ego. I was inspired to write this book after close to 20 years in private practice working with the best. And everyone at some point, though, reaches a plateau where for some reason or another they find that they can't get to that next level. That's where my practice has been focused, and that's where the book will be focused as well. My name is Dr. Mitchell Greene. I'm a clinical and sports psychologist and author of Managing the Mind Chatter: How Athletes Can Build Confidence, Reduce Doubts, and Win the Mental Game.